Hey everybody, welcome to Cars with Cocktails, a show where Charles and I drink stuff and talk about car stuff. Today we're going to be talking about parts people, which I was once a parts person for.
Now what are you, a parts?
I don't know.
Some sort of other creature?
I like to call myself a pretend technician. That's my preferred.
A pseudo technician?
My preferred pronoun is pretend technician. But hey, that's me.
Also, I'm not really here. This is just we've really upped our special effects and augmented reality, all those things.
He's not actually here. It's a figment of your imagination. So today we're drinking.
Oh, that looks fancy.
This was gifted to me. So this is Jack Daniel's 1981 gold medal. So this was gifted to me for Christmas from my mother-in-law, who was, she's not a big drinker, and she said she was gifted this a long time ago from somebody who she believed gave away something that she believed to be expensive.
I mean, it comes in a box.
It comes in a box. So what had happened was, obviously, I'm not a connoisseur of whiskeys.
Yeah, for sure.
So I Googled it, and this is a roughly $600 to $700 bottle of liquor. So
I'm drunk just thinking about
it. So we're gonna try it and see. I have no idea what we're getting into here.
I also don't start expecting like us to bust out fancy alcohol.
Yeah, just to be clear, anybody who thinks that we're like super bougie and drink really expensive stuff,
no.
We were both pretty upset about spending $40 on the shittiest bottle of Campari Italian liquor that ever exists on a planet. It was real bad.
Yeah. I like the cork though. It's got like Jack Daniel's or something.
Yeah, it does. I can tell you I'll probably never again in my life drink a bottle like this or have it in my possession. So let's
you need to get a couple books on your bookshelf and like store that behind it like they do in the movies, I think.
Now, I guess is you and I are not whiskey drinkers generally.
I also want to pre-apologize to everyone that is a whiskey drinker.
You're going to be
because
so
I'm
pissed at
sure
us.
We're going to ruin all of the like proper things for this whiskey. And so I'm sorry is really what it boils down to.
Yeah. So the water, I brought an extra bottle of water for us in case you would like to water it a little bit.
I'm gonna go with it. I don't know. Pour me probably about half that because I wanna go slow. Oh God, that's like $10. That is also not happening.
Well, I was reaching, and I made an error. So
okay,
put a little, let it melt a little bit.
I want to smell it.
And we're gonna talk about. It smells like whiskey, but a lot less like harsh and sharp. Right?
I would agree with that. A lot of sweetness, like a honey sweetness smell to it.
I almost think apple juice kind of comes to mind a little bit, like whiskey and apple juice a little bit.
I really like the smell of it. I'm gonna just stick my whole face in it.
It does have a great flavor to the nose.
Yeah.
Also, if you notice, I'm not sure how clearly you can see it. My knees.
Paul's been working today.
Are extremely dirty. So we've been working. We have our project that I think we've mentioned in the past.
I feel like I kind of want to give these guys like a little more insight.
A peek? I like it.
Than, maybe just the normal channels.
What would you like to share?
Okay, so I think we've actually dropped hints about this on the podcast before, that we had this upcoming project and we were working together on it. I think we actually filmed here. We filmed it when I was here last time for this car. I dropped a hint on one of our shows that it was a Jetta. I'll tell you that it's not a Jetta. I don't think I'm ready to reveal the car yet, but I think that like the powertrain we're going with, I think it's safe. Is that a fair?
Yeah.
So Paul and I are going to be doing this big build. Not really a big. It feels like a big build today, but not really a big build. We are going to be 24 valve VR6 swapping a Volkswagen, shockingly enough, with some pretty cool story behind it. There'll be a bit of an adventure throughout this whole thing. We'll be able to collaborate with a good friend of ours as well, so that'll be a lot of fun and hopefully do some cool stuff. Ideally, we'll bring this vehicle to Wookiees in the woods.
That would be the goal.
Mad looking forward to that. I will not be driving my Wookiee, though. I'll be driving my yellow car because I am bougie as hell when it comes to that, and I like to be comfortable. Paul may or may not.
I'll be less comfortable, I think.
Less comfortable, for sure. But it's been that computer turned off. Was that okay?
I don't know.
The screen shut off?
I don't know.
The light's on the camera. Is it still good?
Still going.
Okay. All right. Sorry.
Sorry, we're not used to the in-person podcast.
Yeah. So I think it's going to be really, really fun. And I mean, you guys are going to see, we'll have a lot of content around it as the time approaches. We haven't really talked about it on either one of our channels because we want it to be something a little more special. But I feel like you guys deserve a reward for having to listen, for us ruining this bottle of whiskey, if nothing else. But, we appreciate you guys tuning in and hanging out with us while we drink and bullshit and today talk shit about parts people. Yeah, it's going to be cool though. And I think you guys are really going to dig it. The car we had initially planned to get may not have worked out so well, but we'll
our initial plan didn't go as planned. So we did call an audible and
it's Audible City.
Yeah. So today, parts people, for the folks at home,
just ready to.
I'm sure people are dying to get it. I did obviously taste it already. Give your reaction.
I feel like, so one, the fact that I can take a sip of it and not like
and a straight whiskey,
is really impressive. I feel like it's good because, like I said, because I can just drink it. I almost feel like it needs a little more body to it, like it's kind of thin. Does that make sense?
I do get what you're saying. I felt a similar thing, but it is, I will say.
I mean, it tastes really good.
It's good, and I'm not neither of us are whiskey drinkers. Definitely not a straight whiskey drinker. So the fact that we can just sip on it without it even being really, I drank it straight away, so it hadn't even really gotten any ice water down at all. Now, that's probably a testament to a $600 bottle of liquor.
If you've ever had a high dollar bottle of liquor, let us know, because I know I have never partaken in such a divinely expensive bottle of alcohol. But it's good, and I'm thankful that we got to try it. So, parts people. Now, you've spent the majority of your career in the parts world.
Yep.
I have not. However, I have dealt with plenty of parts people. And when I think about parts people, I kind of think of it in a couple of different spaces. I think of like your dealership parts people, your shops, and that kind of stuff. I also think about the lowly folks that are hustling at places like Advanced Auto Parts, and sometimes two very different worlds.
Well, for sure. I hadn't really thought about it from that perspective. I was thinking of framing it just so people understand the dealer world a little bit.
Okay.
So
yeah,
I think the important thing for some people to understand, at least let's talk about the dealer world first, and we can talk about the other thing, which is a whole different topic. The dealer world, for most people who don't know, dealerships function as separate departments within a dealership. Parts is one, service is one. Sales really has two, but they generally fall under one umbrella.
Yeah, they're all assholes, so we just put them in the one.
New and used are usually separate, but they're closer together than parts and service, even though they all obviously work under the same roof and oftentimes work together. Parts and service rely on each other probably the most out of any departments.
For sure.
But also probably have the most battles, I would say.
Yeah. I wouldn't
say they have the most strained relationship, because sales and everywhere else pretty much has the more strained relationship. But yeah, more friction, I would say, between parts and service. So parts people, that's the parts people world. So why don't you share your perspective on parts people as a general whole?
So there are a couple of exceptions that I've dealt with. Some really, really amazing parts people that know the car line. They know all the little intricacies that you really do need to know. I mean, I think VW is probably the most criminal about extra parts that are needed or super sessions and things like that. And they also do a really poor job of communicating, and you have to like dig 5 screens down the road to figure out a super session or also use with part. And I've had some really great parts people, but on average, I would say that it's really. I'm trying to think of how to frame this in a way
You don't have to be nice.
no, I'm not trying to be nice necessarily. I'm trying to frame it in a way that like conveys what I'm trying to say. So I feel like most of my experience with parts people and on a whole is that they give no fucks about anything but their part. Their mentality is, I'm going to sell this part whether you get it fucking now or whether you get it at 4 o'clock. So whatever you got going on don't mean shit to me.
Right.
You'll get the part when I decide you get the part. It's similar to the very almost arrogant attitude of a service advisor where like, you should be licking the ground I walk on because I'm the best fucking thing on the planet, and failing to appreciate from a technician standpoint, like, I have a car I got to get done. I need this part not in 3 hours. And this is not a part where you'd have to order it or any of that shit. Like, I need you to walk 25 feet and just go get it.
Right.
Like, get off your phone, move off of Craigslist or whatever, and just like go pick up my part. And that's obviously super frustrating for a technician. I also have dealt with a lot where, and this is kind of every role in the dealership, where if it's something that doesn't exist inside your little box, it doesn't exist at all. So there's very limited willingness to explore another option for parts. So in our world, it's going to be, okay, we don't have it in stock. Well, how can we get it, right? Is there something we can call another wholesale supplier or something like that? And if it, especially at the dealership, right, if it doesn't exist on my little computer right here in my one program, then it's not real.
Well, for sure, the thing that and as somebody who ran a parts department for a long time, that was one of the number one things that I preach. Now, having been a tech before that changed my perspective relative
Completely.
to what most of the people are. Is most people, and a lot of times, parts may be responsible for a shitty experience a customer had in the service drive.
Yep.
And it may not have been anything to do with the tech who worked on the car, the service advisor, the service manager, or anybody as a part of that process. The shit experience came from a parts person who fucked up, which may have been a fuck up, but oftentimes what I've seen is that fuck ups don't get addressed because there's no real expectation. And I will say this, I wonder a lot of times, interesting story about parts, the world of parts, is I won. Volkswagen used to have, you may or may not know this, for managers in fixed ops, they would have a thing called a reward trip.
Yeah. I call that the penis meeting. Parts and service meeting. P&S meeting.
So it's not the person.
Oh, not the penis meeting?
No, so it's not the parts and service meeting, that's a different thing.
That also happened there.
Yes, that happens too. But this is, if you were to be a top 5% maybe performing managers in your respective department in the U.S., I don't remember if it's 5%. It's some number.
Whatever the
number is. You go on the reward trip. This is a all expense paid trip by VW for you.
Nice.
And whatever. So I actually would have won it 2 years in a row, but 2008 collapse happened, and so they pulled the reward trip in 2009 or 2010, whenever I would have won it. And I think there was like 2 years in a row they didn't do it, and then I ended up getting another
2 years. Then I'm like, I don't get my reward trip. Fuck you. I'm leaving.
So I did go on one of them
Nice.
to Aruba. It was beautiful and all expense paid and whatever else. But in the first day I was there, I was hanging out and I met a guy who was a service manager who was a former parts manager. And the first thing he said to me was, you need to get out of parts, otherwise no one will ever give you the respect
Interesting.
you're due. And to me, it's kind of a testament on the back end of how dealerships are generally managed, is parts is the least respected department because oftentimes they're seen as essentially the guardian of the parts.
Right.
And that's essentially the only role that they have that gets taken seriously is make sure that this inventory isn't wrong and we lose a shitload of money on inventory, which happens pretty common. When I started in my dealership and took over as manager, the first inventory, there was $75,000 worth of missing inventory. So it's not uncommon for stuff like that to happen. And that's what's generally on a high level seen as the parts job.
Right.
Which is why so much of the shit you're talking about, which is they don't give a fuck about technicians. They don't care. They have no sense of urgency. They have no appreciation for the type of circumstance that a tech can potentially be in that time. And for me, I did not want my people. I always stressed how important techs were, especially because they represent so much of the business of what every parts department does. But then, obviously, that's certainly a terrible problem. But to me, the biggest travesty that I think is always a challenge that every parts place is forced with, but dealerships are even worse, is retail counter customers, because they, to be quite frank with most people, they're seen as a waste of time.
Right.
Because they consume a lot of time, but they almost never buy much of anything.
Yeah, you spend 35 minutes for a $2 seal.
Right, $2 seal. That's legitimately true. That's very common to happen. Is you'll spend 25, 35 minutes with somebody, and that you have technicians banging at the back counter because you're up at the front.
You need $1,000 worth of parts from the tech needs $1,000 worth of parts, and this customer needs a $2 bolt.
Right, and this customer needed a bolt for one thing, and it's oftentimes known as a time suck. Now that to me is a different dynamic because it creates this other thing where customers have a shitty experience with your dealership.
Yep.
And then don't come there for service because they had a shit experience in parts.
Well, and from a higher up, like next level management, GM or fixed ops type manager who kind of oversees parts and service, they don't care about the technician having to wait nearly as much as they care about the customer screaming. And you know what? To a certain point, I get it, right? Because where the hell's the tech? And this is part of how technicians see this. They see it that the parts person has the attitude of, well, where the hell else are you going to get your parts from?
Right.
You can't go anywhere else.
Right. You don't have an option. Right.
The customer does, and wholesale, like body shops and things like that, they can go anywhere. So body shops, customer, technician.
Right.
Right.
They feel like they're taking the back seat. And I think it's mostly just a lack of empathy stressed from within 100%. The management to recognize, like, hey, Now that doesn't mean that technicians aren't fucking assholes.
True.
And have 100%. Sometimes completely unrealistic expectations. We had a tech. Funny. We had a tech at my old dealer, and oftentimes we've talked about techs having different attitude problems and whatever else, and he used to do this on the regular, and I always nipped it in the bud when it happened. But a lot of times, counter people don't know how to deal with it. Is he would walk to the counter with just a part written down on the back of an RO. It'll be like intake manifold, and he would just throw the thing on the counter and say, "Tell me everything I need for this. Write up everything I need for this job." And it's like,
what the hell does
what does that mean? Yeah. What the fuck does that mean? Now you know that, and I know that, but parts people, especially when they're not like super experienced, they don't know to be like, "Fuck you."
I also think too, like, we take for granted as technicians and even as customers, like
what you know.
You go to the parts department because you expect them to know all the shit, right? You expect them to know that if you are getting a timing belt kit, that you need new engine mount bolts, right? You expect them to know that, or a seal or whatever. And oftentimes that poor expectation, or maybe realistic, I don't know. I mean, if I went to someone
I would say the top, let's say, 20 to 40% of parts people, they know that.
Right. But
that leaves the vast majority of them.
I think you were really optimistic at
maybe that's not even
20%.
Okay. Maybe 20 is about as high as it is. But the vast majority of them for sure don't know that and aren't going to tell you, like, hey, when you do an engine mount, you should do the bolts.
And the way it works is, as a technician, you go get this timing belt kit. You expect all the stuff. You know that. So when you request these parts, you don't tell the parts person because they should know. Correct. Whether they should or shouldn't, kind of irrelevant. And so you quote the parts out. The service advisor calls the customer. Customer buys the work. You go to get the parts, and you're like, "Where the hell's my bolts?"
Mm-hmm. It's missing X, Y, or Z.
Right.
Whatever. That is absolutely a common problem.
This is super common.
Very common.
Like daily.
Yeah.
If
and
not
it causes
weekly.
fucking explosions that happen over and over and over again.
Because now you got basically money that either you have to call the customer back and sell. So advisor's pissed, customer's pissed, parts person oftentimes gets blamed, right?
Yep.
Technician usually doesn't because they say the throwback is, well, they should have known that that's part of it.
Yep.
And I mean, that's not necessarily fair to the parts department.
Nope.
It's all like everybody had a role in that. Like both sides have a role, right? Yep. And I think if we I honestly just cross-trained a little bit. It's hard. It's hard to train a parts person in the shop if that's not their thing. Yeah. But I think having that cross-training mindset of, okay, I know they should know this, but I'm going to tell them anyway because it takes me a half a second to say, and the bolts, and then you're covering your ass on it. And
I never understood techs who didn't want to do that, especially when you hold a firework in your hand and you lit it and it fucking explodes in your hand. The next time you do it, you're like, oh, maybe better not do that again this time.
Yeah, but nope.
Just fucking over again. Slam their head against the wall. I seen it, and interesting, I just had a thought, is that doesn't even come into contact with, I think, the most egregious one, which is, yes, parts people fuck over techs all the time. It creates a lot of turmoil for them. It has a lot of problems. But parts people fuck over service advisors the worst, because service advisors have to pick up all the shit after the parts person fucks up. And that, I think, is the biggest travesty in empathy for a mistake from a parts person who doesn't have to then turn around and tell this customer, hey, we told you we were going to get this done today. Turns out it's going to be 3 more days.
Yep. They have no skin in the game of having to deal with anyone because their paycheck's not affected because they're still going to get paid the same.
Yep.
What are they going to get? Like, you forgot to order the part. Okay, sorry. It's the advisor that's getting screamed at. It's the tech that the car's down now for 3 more days, so they're not making any money.
Right.
So literally they have nothing they've lost other than maybe some respect from their coworkers, but who fucking cares?
Right.
Because you're not going to go anywhere else to get parts.
Right.
So, and the problem is that kind of thing rarely gets properly addressed.
Never.
Because like all the other roles in the building, there's often an absolute pathetic attempt at training and not really any reward for it. I mean, most of the parts guys at our dealership, my old dealership, they basically got paid the same. Right? Because they're all on the same pay structure. They get paid by a percentage of parts sales. And I think they actually did get a little bit based on shop hours, which is very good.
Yeah,
I think that's super, super helpful. Because even if they don't fully understand the gravity of the situation,
it matters to them, yeah.
They're somewhat invested in it, but the training is just by and large pathetic. And if you have somebody that doesn't really give a shit, like there's no incentive for them to remember that this job needs a bolt.
Right.
Or whatever.
So that, to me, that's 2 sides of that same thing. Is techs and I don't think most techs are like this, but there are some that are very bad at it, is have a unrealistic expectation. I think because, and it may be a cross-training thing where they think that the computer is going to just say you need all this. And now, I will say, now is changing a little bit where Volkswagen is now providing, it doesn't say everything you need. It just says other stuff you might want as well. I think is becoming a more common thing. And obviously we don't deal with the same type of systems that we're not using an official version of ECA. We are using official versions of the factory stuff. It's just not the same. So it's probably looks a little different than but I expect it's similar. So That will get better if VW makes it better. I think VW or Audi makes it. But I don't have high expectation that it's going to be anytime soon.
No, I wouldn't either.
And to be fair, I think this shit is way more complicated than anybody gives it credit for. It's exactly like the idea of quoting labor hours.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, cool. It seems in theory like that should be an easy process.
But it's not always.
But it's so difficult because it's exponentially harder. You think about something like just an example of quoting a clutch on a GTI. The difference on a Mark 7 GTI, if you were quoting a clutch on a GTI, okay. I don't even know, what would you quote?
I mean, if I had to proper quote it, I would look it up. But if I had to ballpark
just roughly, off the top of your head.
8 hours.
Yeah, okay.
Give or take.
The thing that you're not thinking about is
it a
performance pack car?
Yep.
Right. So now you have a performance pack car, has electric differential, electric ELSD. This whiskey's starting to affect me slightly.
It's be hitting different, yo.
It do be hitting different. And that you have to take it off.
Yeah.
You got to take it off. It's a different process. Takes more time.
More hardware
right?
that you
more
gotta
hardware.
replace.
Right. So
this is, I'm going to have to set that down for a minute.
I drank mine quite rapidly.
That is hardcore there, broster.
Well, I mean,
he's an all-in kind of guy.
If you're going to do it, if you're going to drink some Jack Daniel's 1981 gold medal, you should do it all the way.
Yeah.
And
all in.
So I just think that parts people, oftentimes as a parts person myself, I found it's probably the least respected dealership position aside from and I'm talking about if you talk about like a GM dealer principal perspective, it's the least respected position that isn't like a lube tech, porter, whatever.
I could see that. I can totally see that.
And because of that, it oftentimes doesn't pay as well as any of the other positions. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't attract quite as talented people. And it also creates the uninterest in holding people accountable because they know they can only do so much in holding people accountable when relative to their peers, they're paid significantly less. Yeah. So it often becomes, and that's, again, same thing as that's why that guy on that reward trip, first thing he said to me.
Just get the fuck out.
Yeah. Because that is a normal perspective. And frankly, I found that to be mostly true. Which
is unfortunate because I think it is very much underrated how valuable a good parts manager really is to your building.
Yes, but the problem is, and from I feel like kind of a douche when I say this, but
have some more of that, and then
maybe I'll feel less that way. When I left my dealer, it created a vacuum that had ripple effects through other things that were not just exactly what we did, and because of that, I think it was a little more clear, although oftentimes, you know how it is. Oftentimes when people leave dealerships, they get thrown on the bus.
They're
for
the scapegoat for every single thing.
Everything.
Ever since he left.
Right.
Yeah.
That person did X and that person did Y, and that's all this shit that happened that supposedly were the reason for this thing that's happening right now.
Yep.
You get scapegoated a lot. But the problem is that a lot of things that happen, let's say, for example, a good example, things that happen in the service drive are affected by the performance of the parts department. Mm-hmm. And if you have a top level performing one, it's going to be going very smooth. And if you have a bottom performing one, it's going to be a fucking shit show.
Yeah.
Because every special order part, every warranty part, everything gets affected by stuff, including inventory. I mean, controlling inventory to make sure that you have appropriate inventory levels so that you can fill failures that happen on the service drive.
Exactly. Well, think about it from an advisor standpoint. You have customers that you're taking in and out. You're trying to get them in, trying to do the right thing for them. If you have a parts department where you don't trust that they have the shit that you're supposed to have, now that advisor, rather than being aggressive and getting the customers in the door, they become timid and apprehensive about getting that extra customer in because they're worried
they're going to get yelled at.
They're not going to have an oil filter or something mundanely stupid like windshield wipers for my Touareg when I was in Atlanta. I left the house,
That's not
stopped
shocking,
and got
though.
fuel. I'm like, you know what? I'm here. I should clean my wipers. Went to clean it, and the wiper ripped. And of course, it fucking rained the entire drive. 6 hours to Atlanta. So I get to Atlanta, and this was probably a Sunday. So Monday, I go to the dealership. I'm like, hey, I need some wipers. He's like, oh, it'll be 2 days. We don't have them. I'm like, I know you don't need to have wipers for every single Volkswagen ever made, but dude, come on. I mean,
So I'm not surprised, and only because of this. Wipers, well, really anything. Dealerships function their inventory based off of turn, like any inventory system would. But generally, once something hasn't sold in a year, it's going to be
they drop it.
It's going to be returned and sent back and no longer stocked. Because of that, on Touareg 2 wipers, three Touareg 3 wipers, man, 3 I think would be on the edge.
I mean, this is now what? When did they stop Touareg? 18? 17? 17,
I think.
So, I mean, it's a 3-year-old car.
Yeah. Yes, but the problem is there's not that many of them out there. And I don't know. You would have to see the numbers. Now, sometimes here's the problem with parts inventory, and I know this because I ran one. Something that happens for the viewers at home at least once a week, minimum once a week, some technician will leave the parts counter in a huff saying, we never have fucking anything.
I've said those exact words.
We never have fucking anything.
What do you mean we don't have brake pads for this car?
Yes. And that is a very normal thing, mostly because technicians have no idea how complicated parts are.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of different variations. Everybody thinks like, oh, brakes for these cars are all the same. It's like, yeah, not really. There's like a VIN split between this year and this year, and or the early ones have this, and they don't really ever get sold. So this car fits within that 6-month window of when you would have that thing. That shit happens. And then those inevitable conversations always spring up. I've witnessed my share of those conversations in my life, and to be fair, I've probably been on the other side of them as well. So yeah, that's a very normal thing. So what he's saying is a normal, the feeling of we should have had this. The problem is it has to bear out in the numbers, and the problem is you don't know whether you have a shitty parts manager or the parts manager who's doing a good job and just doesn't have it because it hasn't sold.
Right. And oftentimes that comes down to communication, just like all the things, right?
Well, again, this is the other part is because it's known as a low level in terms of job and dealership, it also has low accountability, low talent, all that stuff to go with it. And that often leads to not tracking things like lost sales, for example, which is something that I don't know if you know about, but there's a system that pretty much every dealership in the U.S. functions on maybe 2 different systems that they function off of. ADP or Reynolds and Reynolds are the 2 of them. And they have a system in their inventory that they should track when things like this happen, where they go in and they put into that part number a lost sale so they can track it to know that here's a time where we could have sold it, that we should have had it, but we can't. And if you don't do that, you don't have that information.
I ordered those wipers and then never went to pick them up.
That's normal.
Because they didn't have them fast enough.
Yeah, that's normal.
I needed them in one day.
Yeah. Yeah, I get it.
Anyway.
They should.
What was fucked up, though, is he checked, like, local in Atlanta.
Nobody had
them.
Again.
Audi didn't have them.
So
it's a part, like, it's just not a high sale number or a high
Yep.
number selling item, which is... I also feel like, though, you do have to kind of walk this line of, okay, this is not a high-selling piece of merchandise, but it's, like...
the problem is the problem with those things is you can justify... Let me give you an example. After I left the dealership, so the inventory when I left was kind of hovering generally in the 350,000 range. Obviously, always inventory ebbs and flows as it always will, whatever. When I left, within 1.5 years, 1.5 years after I left the dealership, the inventory was $750,000.
They're just ordering everything.
Everything.
Let me get one of everything.
Everything. Because they didn't. The manager who was in place was not controlling inventory. He was allowing all the parts people in the dealership to do it.
Yeah,
and
to
what they
decide
think
what
is, oh, we ran out of this one time. Order fucking 20 of them. We won't run out anymore.
Yep.
And people don't realize, because they've never been on the other side of actually controlling an inventory, that if you have that attitude, you will explode in inventory.
Yeah.
A year and a half.
Yeah, doubled
it almost doubled the inventory. And we're talking about $400,000
That's insane.
in a year and a half in additional inventory with the same business.
Yeah.
Think about that for a second.
Damn.
How fucking crazy that is.
Yeah.
$400,000 with these, and the thing that for the kids at home to know,
Chilling.
parts inventory is cash. You're paying for it. It's not, well, some businesses finance their inventories.
But dealership, it's not finance
Dealerships,
like the sales
correct.
floor is.
It's not like a finance like cars would be. Generally, especially with the way most dealerships are capitalized, parts inventory is cash dollars spent, and it's just sitting on the inventory and hoping you sell it.
I can't believe that parts manager lasted a year after that. Maybe nobody looked.
Well, he blamed most of it on me.
Oh, so it was your fault.
yeah.
You ordered a bunch of shit before you left. I ordered $400,000 worth of stuff.
Well, when I left, I intentionally did. I did this on purpose because obviously I knew I was starting the company. When I left, I've been around the block. I knew that shit was going to get blamed on me. So I waited until our inventory was done. And that week I gave my notice.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, now my hands are clean. You can't fucking say if shit
starting from scratch.
If shit gets missing, because that's what inevitably happens with poor inventory control. A large amount of money goes missing. And again, generally not because of stealing. It's because of
it's like mismanagement
of poor practice,
right.
that a bunch of stuff gets given out of the counter, and doesn't get accounted for properly, and then you have $30,000 missing. Yes.
Damn.
Yeah, people don't realize how that's the way shit goes. But yeah. How you feeling about your...
It's good. I don't want to drink it too fast because I want to be able to stand up by the time. But I'm clearly not a real man. That is... yeah, it's super good, though. I'm just kind of chilling, enjoying it.
I'm gonna go
I enjoyed
light here.
trashing...
Parts people?
That is not much lighter than the first one.
I mean, it's lighter. I probably should hold off on that too much.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, the parts people deserve most of the hate they get, I would say.
I would agree. From
techs. I think they deserve most of the hate they get. They do not have a proper appreciation for the people who frankly are responsible for the majority of the business that gives them a job. Oftentimes.
And I think that's my biggest problem. Like, shit happens. You forgot to order a part. Like, you missed it on. I mean, look.
Have some fucking humility.
We all
say you're
up.
sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
dude,
sorry.
I'm really sorry. Like, sorry. Like, I'm gonna order the part. I got it for tomorrow. Whatever. I'm really sorry. But it's like, well, I ordered it. It'll be here tomorrow.
Also, the thing that I think is important to do is communicate with your techs to recognize when there is a sense of urgency and when there isn't, so that you can know, hey, I need you to try to do something about this right away.
Yeah.
And that way they know, and this is one of those boy cried wolf situations. Is I know a lot of fucking idiot technicians.
Everything's a fucking
everything
emergency.
has to happen right fucking now, and then that's gonna get you ignored.
Yep.
And not getting happen. I know you right now. You're at home. You're thinking.
Johnny Tech Boy?
Johnny
Johnny Oil Dick? Is that
Johnny Flat Rate. That's what we'll call him.
Johnny Flat Rate.
Johnny Flat Rate.
He's got to have a little bit more derogatory name than that. Noodle it.
Yeah. We'll call him Johnny Hack Job.
Johnny Hack Rate?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that person for sure exists. But I also think that the majority of the time, parts people are at fault for not properly empathizing with other people. I think customers too, because I think oftentimes parts people really drive away customers and don't have, and probably I was guilty of this at some points in my career, don't have the proper communication to rebut when customers have unrealistic expectations of them as a employee of a dealership.
Well, I mean, and to be fair, customers have unrealistic expectations
All the time.
of that parts person knowing every single part
100%.
for every single model that is ever made. And, I think the worst are us enthusiasts. Like, you read it on a forum that you can cross-reference these two parts, and you go up to the dealership and you think Johnny Parts Boy is supposed to
they're
know.
sold all day long, and the reality is that the things you buy as a consumer are things that those people may have sold twice this year.
Yeah.
If that.
Or you want them to look up some random shit that's a European part, and it's not that they don't know,
They don't have access to it.
or they don't want to, it's just not in their capability to do. And then we jump back online and start trashing the parts department because they're all fucking stupid because they didn't know the cross-reference number for this one rando-ass car that you read on VW Vortex works for this other thing. Like, that's not what we do at the dealership.
The thing that I always see that makes me laugh.
Monkey Wrench 69 said.
Is someone comes in who's been reading way too much online, and they start using like Vortex language.
I had the ETR 496.
Yeah, exactly.
The fuck is that?
So they start using Vortex language with parts people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and then they act like the parts person is stupid for not knowing it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
The terminology that people use in the enthusiast community doesn't translate to dealership world things.
Nope.
It just doesn't, and it's not a thing that happens.
Right.
And I don't know. Nothing comes to mind. I remember when I was at the dealer, even when we were obviously got big into the accessory world and online space, but I had a customer who called us and was asking for DG springs. And they asked over and over, and I thought I had misheard the person on the phone like a bunch of times, and I didn't realize eventually they were saying they wanted driver gear springs.
I wouldn't have known that. Why don't you just fucking say driver gear? You don't need to abbreviate. It's not like you're saving time.
Yeah, I didn't know. Well, because in the forums, and I realized this was the first time I realized this was happening. Is on the forums, a lot of people use an abbreviated. They just put DG springs, and so I don't know if this person knew and was being an asshole, or this person just didn't know a different way to say it.
It's probably that one.
It probably is.
Just didn't know. So like, there's always that element of
right. So there's this thing that happens where it's like you're saying words that make no sense to me.
Yeah.
And it's like these are the only words I know to say.
It's tough.
It's as with most things, it's a communication issue, right?
Absolutely.
But okay, so I think we've covered the dealer world.
Yeah.
Pretty comprehensively.
Is there any more trash we could talk?
We could, but would it be fair?
I don't know.
It'd be fine.
If you sell a water pump, you need fucking coolant.
Yeah, you need coolant with a water pump. All right.
I saw a TikTok,
Idiots.
as this will transition nicely to what I think we're going to move to next. I saw a TikTok of this dude. He's like, O'Reilly's rant number 974. If you come to me and buy brake pads and I ask you if you need brake fluid, you don't have to say that you have brake fluid at home. Like, first of all, motherfucker, I got brake fluid at home.
Uh-huh.
I got it covered. But second of all, man, I think of like the hard time that the dealership folk get. I do not envy the folks working at the retail parts stores.
So much worse.
First of all, it's very similar to the dealership parts department, where it's not the highest paying job out there.
To be clear, from the user perspective, much worse. They are paid
Infinitely worse.
Significantly less. The average.
It's a normal retail job.
Yes,
they're paid like a normal retail employee would be paid.
Unfortunately, the reality of that is that it attracts entry level skill,
which is great. And there probably is some training program that these companies have. I know a little bit about the back end of a couple of them, but like, I think it's not so much an issue with them and their training as the fucking customers that come in there are asking. And like, people joke about it in forums and on posts like, oh, I went to the auto parts store and I asked them for a 97 Ford Fling-A-Floodle valve and they didn't know what it was. I'm so fucking great. Like, no, you were just going to harass some employee that worked. Like, you don't go to fucking Target and ask them about some weird-ass random
Some
apparel shit.
Yeah, right.
No.
That doesn't exist there.
You go by that. Oh, they asked me if I had a manual or an automatic for wiper blades. Well, you know what, asshole? Maybe on your car it doesn't matter. But I bet
There's a car it probably does.
If you hunted down all the cars ever made in the world, there's some rando ass car that the manual had different wiper blades than the automatic.
Here's what I say. It could be a packaging thing. It could be, frankly, as somebody who creates a catalog on a regular basis for parts, it is so much more complicated than anybody realizes. Years, models, blah, blah. And it used to be so much worse. I mean, the Mark IV was a legit fucking shit show.
Oh, totally.
Of epic proportion in terms of parts. Multiple different PCVs. Like, you just think about like a 1.8T
there's
GTI
like 5 different
across every 1.8T GTI. There's multiple engine codes, multiple PCV valve setups or PCV system setups, different transmissions,
5-speed, 6-speed, auto, Jetco auto. I mean,
yes.
Ridiculous.
The variety between components within that engine were obnoxious, and that's just one car.
And then you had to hope and pray that the VIN was actually right.
Well, that was early in the days,
it wasn't even though like the VIN split was this, it wasn't like 4 one way or the other, and it fell in the other category.
Yeah, fun fact, VIN splits they're not very common anymore.
No, thank God.
But man, back in the day, they used to be a legit fucking nightmare.
I don't think people really appreciate how horrible.
Unless you were an industry person and you've seen what it looks like firsthand, and probably most techs don't even get it. You just happen to be one of the more probably knowledgeable techs. Cataloging shit is a fucking shit show, and every manufacturer, and I can tell you, we know VW obviously, and Audi a little bit more for me, but the parts system on most of these is complicated. I can't imagine. I'm sure there are other manufacturers who might be better, and others who might be worse.
Yeah,
so
totally.
The idea of doing that across every multiple line and then walking in and expecting some guy who just got hired 6 weeks ago to know what the fuck you're talking about, and he may or may not even know anything about cars to begin with. And like, I think people on your hand, it's like, okay, if they fucking hire him, they should know about cars. Like, good luck with that.
Yeah, I agree, and that's great if they do. But I mean,
they're not going to hire any employees.
Right.
Though nobody will work there.
Right.
If everybody has to know about cars to work there at the amount that they're paying them to be there, impossible.
Not going to happen.
And the alternative is, hey, guess what? At home, you'll end up with extremely expensive parts to potentially
you get to pay 3 times as much.
Afford somebody who actually knows. Usually, there's one guy, the manager of the store,
the older dude.
Yeah, it's either the old grumpy guy that shouldn't talk to humans at all, or
he knows every part in that damn store,
or the manager, one or the other. Sometimes they're the same person.
Yeah.
That's the person who knows shit, and everybody goes to them,
goes to old
to
Bob
ask them, and like, hey, Bob, and like, meh. Yeah.
What do you want now, little Johnny part stick? Overall, I have to say, and I frequent part stores a lot. Oftentimes, it's for little knick-knacky stuff and nothing where I really do need help. But man, every once in a while, there's just some obscure ass thing that I need, and I gotta say, I've had pretty positive experiences with like, dude, we don't know what the hell you're talking about. Come on back and let's like coolant hoses. Together, Coolant hoses is a pretty common one, or like
pre-COVID, guys, pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID for sure. Now I don't leave my home much anymore. But yeah, I've had pretty positive experiences. And keep in mind, like, a lot of times it's just like the lingo difference between the forum people and the dealership world. You're going to come in and ask for something that Chevy is the only manufacturer that calls it that. The parts catalog doesn't call it that. No other manufacturer calls it that. And you're asking for that part by Chevy lingo. I mean, can you really be surprised that they don't know exactly what you're talking about right off the cuff?
Also, my thing that I always think is, as a consumer, and I know you feel like people feel like they shouldn't have to do this, but to me, I just feel like this is courteous as a human being. Is if you walk into a business and you're asking for something, and they're not, you can tell the person is struggling to accomplish the thing you're trying to get from them in whatever way. If you know a way to help them,
yeah, it's incumbent upon you to
fucking help them. Stop being a piece of shit with a fucking ego and
I know more than
feel
this guy.
superior while you look down your nose at them and fucking help the person. Like, it's going to be better for you if you do.
Yeah.
And guess what? You won't look like a fucking asshole.
Yep. But instead, we give them a hard time because we know more about cars. Cool there, old man. Yeah. I was trying to think of an analogy like, good luck turning that into a PDF or something.
Well, they can't do PDFs. They can't
well,
even open
that's the point,
PDFs.
right? What's PDF?
Never mind, create a PDF. Yeah.
Oh, man. But on that note, I also do have plenty of brake fluid, so I don't need any more. But hey, props on you because you're doing what you're supposed to do. So I respect that. Just don't ask me if I want a credit card because I don't want that shit.
Is a tough. Well, yeah, they always do that. It's a tough gig. I think as per anything that deals with the public, there's always a challenge.
Right.
All of these jobs are infinitely more complicated than anybody could grasp, probably in, I don't know, years. I mean, most of the people you know who are super knowledgeable in a parts position. Did you guys ever have any really sharp parts people there?
Yeah. The manager now he's my guy.
Okay. Oh, yeah. You know him.
Guy.
Yeah, that's right.
He also tolerates me like, hey, man, can you look this up for me?
Yeah.
Hey, man, can you order this for me? Just random shit.
Yeah, so
find a good parts person and buy him a bunch of beer or something. Sweet talk him. It'll be the best money you ever spent.
I will say this. If you go to a dealership, now, if you have a Volkswagen, I would prefer you to purchase through shoptap.com. But if you go to a dealership, it's really good to have a good relationship with somebody and at least have some sort of relationship so that it happens. Now, obviously for me, I got to a place in my old dealer before I left that it was too many people asking for me and it creates a problem.
Right.
But I think that happens probably a lot of places where you have like one person that's the guy that people go to that creates some challenges. But form a relationship with somebody, try to care about them, understand they're probably going to assume you're trying to get something from them, as usually people who are nice to parts people are usually trying to sweet talk them into giving them a discount, or that's kind of the norm expectation. If you really want to build a relationship and have something last, don't be asking for a discount.
Not on transaction one.
Not on transaction one. It's not a great look. You don't walk up to a girl at a bar and say, hey, are we going home or what?
Wait, you don't?
Not right away.
This explains why that has never happened to me.
Oh.
Now I know that I don't have any game.
Because you were always the girl at the bar waiting for someone to ask you?
Every damn time.
Yeah. So
I think the big takeaway too is, from a non-parts person perspective, even though, yes, they should know if you're getting a water pump, you need coolant. Yes, they should know all the things that you assume that they should know. Yeah. But don't assume that they do, and just help them out in any possible way you can. Hey, I also need the bolts. Hey, I also need coolant. Hey, I also need whatever it is, right?
Also, like with every career, a lot of people suck shit at their jobs. And if they suck shit at their jobs, the only way you're going to get what you need out of it is by asking for what you need.
Yeah. Do a little bit of legwork. The help me, help you, help me, help you, help me.
Yeah.
Works well. And don't be afraid to, also don't be a dick, when the parts person needs some help. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, this customer's calling on this thing. Do you know anything about it? You don't have to be an asshole to them. Mm-hmm. That goes a long way to build a good relationship with someone in parts. And whether you're a technician, whether you're a customer, if you're buying shit and you need anything that is not I'll buy this number 3 thing off the shelf, having that relationship will save you time. It will save you money. And man, that is insanely valuable. If you're a parts person, don't be a dickhead about things, especially when you're the one that fucked up. Like, have some empathy,
Have some humility.
have some level of emotion.
Get rid of the ego. I think that's
Yeah.
the biggest problem. I think parts people have shitty egos.
That seems to be a very common automotive industry thing.
Oh, it is.
Big ego. Like, I'm thinking of all the way around. Like,
Yes. Almost universally.
yeah. I wonder why that is. Topic for another day, perhaps.
Perhaps another day. For today, I believe we've covered all the things about
Paul's
parts
gonna
people
fall asleep from.
that suck. We've drank some.
I'm still nursing mine, man.
We've drank
I
some
am
very
feeling
expensive
alright.
whiskey. Feeling quite good.
feel like $75 in my belly.
Yeah, it's probably not quite that high, but not that far off either. That's an episode, guys. Next time we'll be back to our normal thing, probably, maybe.
We got an engine to put together, though.
We got some work to do.
It's time. What else? Is that it? I feel like we're missing something.
That's it.
No guests. This was good. Would you buy this? It's probably a dumb question, so never mind. I'm not even going to ask it. Let's end there.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.